All right. Well, wonderful. Well, as I was just saying, we are going to be doing things a little bit differently. So if you would like to introduce yourself, you can definitely do that in the chat. So please introduce yourself in the chat if you'd like to introduce yourself to others and add your information. And so we're welcome. We love that you are joining us. And you can also put in the chat like what your niche is, what you're working on, what are you investing in, and what that looks like. Okay. So this will be posted to YouTube. So if you are listening on YouTube later, then please like and subscribe so that you can get our latest videos. We are also going to do the market statistics as a separate video that we post to YouTube and send out to the group. And that's because they don't always come out at the time that our videos go live. And so we want to make sure that you guys get that information on those that would like to get that. So we're kind of heading on all cylinders here. We're gonna, be there for people that would like to be in person and introduce themselves and say a little bit about them. We're gonna post it on live for video, and we're also gonna be doing those market statistics too. And in doing that, we're shortening the meetings a little bit. So instead of a couple hours, it'll probably be an hour or so, maybe with questions and things like that. So that's kind of the format. So great, Julie, that's awesome. Rick, if you can post our information, that would be wonderful since you're doing all that. All right, so I am going to continue here. So we are Fred REIA, and so what that means is you do have the chance to become a member of National REIA if you would like to do that. And that will get you all of the National REIA benefits, the discounts with Home Depot or the money back with Home Depot, the access to their classes and things like that. We actually do not do that as a business per se. We give you the opportunity. So our membership is only $70 per year if you wanted to do that. You are, like I said, going to get the links to the videos on YouTube and you'll have access to that. The disclaimer, we do have a full disclaimer that I'm also going to be posting in the comments section on YouTube. And the disclaimer is this is for educational purposes only. Paul is not giving you any type of advice that you should definitely go forward with, and we are not either. That we are actually, Rick and I are real estate brokers. We have our own brokerage, HomeDream Realty and Property Management. So we do sales and property management, but in this capacity, we are in an educational purpose. So that is the main thing here, is just to be with people and to learn from each other. That's our main thing. And the full disclaimer will be in the comments section. All right, so tonight we do have Paul, and I'm going to give him an introduction here in a moment. And then on 8/24, actually, I'm sorry, that's our in-person networking in Virginia, and that's at Wegmans in Fredericksburg. And with that, I say Virginia because I'm actually a broker in both Virginia and Florida. So we open this up to both members, both Virginia and Florida people. And so we provide statistics for both areas and things like that. And so we do have an in-person networking on August 24th. And then our September one, people had asked us about doing an analyzing deal class. So our next online meeting is actually September 14th. And we'll be going through our spreadsheet to analyze a deal. So that will be the next one. And then the September networking is the day after my birthday, and that is on September 28th. So there you go. That is the next in-person networking, and also again in Fredericksburg. All right. So Rick, are you able to do an introduction of Paul, or would you like me to introduce him?
I would love to introduce him. Can you hear me okay?
Great.
All right. So Paul, I love this. He's a recovering orthodontist. That's like us. I hope you've recovered. And a best-selling author, and he's turned real estate investor, and he's on a mission to help other investors like us to reach free faster through real estate investing. And he created and is the founder of the Co-Pilot REI. Excuse me, I have that REI Co-Pilot. You can go to reicopilot.com more information about. And what this is a very comprehensive software application specifically designed for the real estate industry to help investors with very diverse portfolios and assets to be able to track them, be able to analyze them, whether it's rentals, whether it's private lending, whether it's notes, whether it's syndication. This application, this software application, has that ability to do some additional tracking, more so than what we have today. And this is his quest is to help other people, because he was in the same predicament as a lot of us who are searching for a solution to help manage his investments. And he got, you get turned around a lot because you hear all these different ways you can analyze success. And he teamed up with his son to help him develop this software. Is he the software brains of the family? You're the dentist brains and he's the software brains?
He is definitely the brains.
That's awesome. I love it. I love it. I love family events. And this is, he's trying to help everybody reach financial freedom. That's why we do these classes. And so the goal of REI Copilot is to revolutionize the real estate investor experience by empowering individual investors to control their investments and really know what's going on with their portfolio. So we're going to have his information in the chat. He already posted it. And no further ado, Paul, thank you so much for coming to talk to our group.
Well, Rick, thanks for that fine introduction. So I guess I need to
All right.
I need screen sharing.
There you go. I just did it.
you.
So you should be able to share your screen.
I appreciate that so much. Let me see if I can get us on here and get things rolling. Give me just a second to figure out where I am. Gotcha. So you guys can see my screen now?
Do you have the Fred REIA logo on there?
Yep, I do.
Okay.
Awesome.
I hope, right?
Thank you, Paul.
I'm in the right place, right?
That is the
You
right
are.
logo. I was just making sure it didn't mess something up with my screen.
No. I'm hoping I'm starting out in a good spot, right? If it had, another REIA, we'd be in trouble, I guess. So anyway, Rick, thanks for that introduction. Anna, thank you for inviting me to speak. I'm really excited to be here, especially since I'm just down the road from Fredericksburg and Richmond. So it's, hop, skip, and a jump. The challenge with Zoom, of course, is I can't see you guys, especially with when the presentation is up. So I feel kind of like Ricky Bobby in Talladega Nights. He wins the race and his hands start creeping up. He goes, I don't know what to do with my hands. I don't know where to look. It's a little bit weird. So if I'm not staring at you, I apologize. So anyway, it's really an honor to speak to you guys. And I appreciate you all being here. What I'd like to do, as Rick said, is to share a little bit about my real estate investing journey and some things that I've discovered, some things I've developed that have over the years that, hopefully will help you make more money or at least reduce your stress or, give you some more clarity about your real estate investments. Hope that sounds okay.
Excellent. Love to hear how
and
you
also, if
began
I
this
see any
adventure.
questions in the chat, Paul, I will mention them, but I'm going to mute myself. And then if I see anything, I'll let you know. Okay.
Perfect. And this is a fully interactive, I sort of feed off audiences. I can't see anybody but my screen. So that's, the more you speak up, the better. So before we get started, I've got a quick question. How many of you could use $330,000 right now? Now, I normally ask for a show. I'd ask for a show of virtual hands. I'm assuming everybody's hand is up. And if not, I need to talk to you about some lending me some money. So anyway, I put this up because when I was first started investing in real estate, I was in a high net worth mastermind group of, professionals, and we're all sort of learning the ropes. And they assign you a big brother. And my big brother was a guy named Randy, and he'd been, investing for a little bit. And he was a little bit older. He's close to retirement. And I said, so how much money have you got invested? He said, I got about $3 million. I go, oh God, he's doing all right. And I said, so, what kind of return were you getting? Because I had no clue, what to invest in. We had all these different options. And I figured if he's making a good return, I'm going to do what he's doing. And he told me, he said he was making about 15%. And I said, well, how do you know that? And he said, well, that's what they told me. And they're talking about it, these guys called trusted advisors who would come into this group and bring deals to the group. And we just, partner with them. And so, and he said, that's what they told me. And I said, well, don't you think you ought to know? And he looked at me kind of funny and he walked away, and I thought, oh my God, I've made him mad, and we didn't really talk about it the rest of the week. And so we would meet quarterly. And so unbeknownst to me, in between that time for the next quarter, up to this point, he'd really done nothing, except assume he was making 15% to manage his portfolio. And so he, I guess the question challenged him, and he and his son got together and they took a spreadsheet out And they went back for the last year or two, and they entered all of his investments into a spreadsheet. I was going to move this little sheet, I think, out of the way. And so he came back and made a presentation. Now, quick math, if you've got $3 million and you're making a 15% return, that's $450,000 annually. And I think most of us would be pretty set if we could make that kind of money. So you can imagine Randy's shock when he found out that let's see, click here. Hello. My buttons aren't working here all of a sudden. All right. Let's see. Sorry about that.
What we see is it thinks about a 15% return.
Yeah.
That's
oh, there we go. Okay, cool. You can imagine
there we are.
You can imagine his shock when he only made 120,000. I say only 120, but that's $330,000 annually that he was leaving on the table. And the crazy part was he had no clue that was happening. And so, my why is to make sure that this never happens again to me or to one of my friends or to an investor. And so this really was the start of my journey or my search to find a system to help investors find their freedom, because that's really why we're all here, for freedom, right? And so
absolutely,
I chose the title for my talk from the movie Iron Man. I don't know if you guys remember Robert Downey Jr., but he's this guy named Tony Stark, and he's this billionaire industrialist, and he's developing this Iron Man suit, and he's arguing with his team because they want to test the suit, but he didn't want to test the suit. He wanted to take action immediately. And he said, sometimes you got to run before you can walk. And so my goal today is to get you guys to take action, because freedom doesn't just happen. Freedom must be intentionally created. And it seems like most investors use a mixture of paper and spreadsheets, or like my friend Randy, they do almost nothing to organize and manage their investments. And you've heard the expression, if you always do what you've always done, you always get what you've always got, right? But sometimes you just got to run. And it's certainly easier to use the system or the software that we've always used. And, that makes us less willing to try new things, even if they're better. And I'm impressed with how hard most investors and coaches focus on asset acquisition. That's all we talk about, right? But I'm equally amazed at how little focus we give to our investments once they're in our portfolio. It's almost like we turn into a passive investor, right? And so in my search to solve Randy's problem, and really it was my problem, I was surprised to find how little there is in the way of software and systems to actually manage your investments once they've been acquired. And so I don't know, have you guys ever heard of George Antone? Do y'all know who that is? Anybody know?
I don't.
Oh man, he's a brilliant guy, and he's written a bunch of books, and he's big in the real estate space. I think he was a programmer at IBM years ago, and he's written a bunch of books. The favorite book that he's written is called The Debt Millionaire. They're not big books, but they've got lots of information in them. And I would commend anything that he's written to you, because you'll see real estate in a totally different way. He's the opposite of Dave Ramsey as far as how you do this real estate thing. So, and anyway, I recently attended one of George's webinars, and he was discussing the velocity of money, and he was really emphasizing that investors who want to be successful need to have a dashboard to make faster and better decisions. He then went on to say, most investors don't have a dashboard, and this lack of actionable information is really hindering their ability to get to freedom. And can you imagine analyzing all of your investments while wearing this Iron Man suit with all this data coming at you? Wouldn't it be awesome? I mean, you'd never make another bad decision in your life, right? So if you stay with me till the end of this presentation, I'll show you how our handheld dashboard. Now, it may not be as cool as an Iron Man mask, but I can assure you just as effective. So without the suit of armor, Tony Stark is just like one of us, except for the billionaire playboy part. I know all of you are geniuses because you're in this REIA and you're on this call, and I'm sure many of you are very generous with your time and money. And so I've been on this mission for the last several years to create a suit of armor, if you will, to turn the average investor into a real estate investing superhero, able to overcome boring dead-end jobs and to create a life of freedom for themselves and for their families. And so the question is, why should you listen to me? Well, they say an expert is someone who's made enough mistakes to understand how something doesn't work, so they finally have a decent idea of how it does, right? And from that standpoint, I am a highly qualified expert in real estate investing. And I've been practicing, dentistry and then orthodontics since 1984. And I sold my practice this year because I was able to replace my practice income with my income from real estate investments, right? And I've created lots of beautiful smiles, and I've had some success. But I learned that being good at what you do isn't enough. As Robert Kiyosaki would say, I was trading time for dollars. And the aha moment for me, when I finally understood the difference between income and wealth, I was in the slow reading group, so it took me a little bit of time to figure out what you guys already have discovered, that real estate is the best way to build wealth. And like I mentioned, I did the Dave Ramsey thing. So I had money saved up. And so I went on this real estate buying spree, if you will. And so for the first time in my life, I felt like I was in control of my future until the phone started ringing and, emails started pouring in, asking for loan payoffs and asking for more money for rehabs and telling me that tenants had stopped paying their rent. You guys get what I'm, talking about, right? And so the problem was I didn't have systems, right? I had this goal to replace my practice income with passive income, but I didn't have any clue how to organize my assets. And I got to be honest, just like my friend Randy, it didn't seem like I was making the money that these trusted advisors told me I would make. Something was missing. I definitely wasn't prepared. And I don't know, maybe you guys can relate to that situation. As I mentioned, I had no clue how to properly organize my investments. And this is what most disorganized investors look like. Does this look familiar to anybody on the call?
Actually, that's my desk right there.
Well, I don't want to brag, but I didn't have a problem with a messy desk because my messy desk was a pool table, right? And the reality is that you can't have a lifestyle business in the midst of chaos. And as I acquired more assets, it became more difficult to find enough time to manage all of my assets. Many of us in these REIAs are all trying to, get rid of our full-time job and to invest in real estate full-time, but this transition from one to the other can be very demanding on our time. And it's really difficult to make smart decisions if you don't have the right information, or in my case, any information. As dentists and doctors, we tend to trust everybody, which I can tell you may lead to some mighty disappointing outcomes, but that's a lecture for another time. Income uncertainty can arise from things like, later missing payments or unexpected expenses or vacancies or tenant acquisition and rent ready cost, or, just money sitting idle in your retirement accounts. And these are just the few of the things that can impact your cash flow. But cash flow is not always enough. Many investors have a portfolio that's performing well enough to provide, sufficient cash flow. But sometimes, just like my friend Randy, cash flow can mask or hide underperforming assets. And what's interesting to me is a lot of the professional investors that I interact with only look at cash flow, only monthly look at cash flow, and they don't look at any other analytics until the end of the year when their taxes are due. And I really do think they're missing an opportunity to modify or eliminate underperforming assets during the year, which of course would boost their returns. And so when it comes to properly managing a real estate portfolio, I found that most investors, and that includes myself, lack the time and tools, and sometimes even the desire to optimize their assets. And so as I struggled to find the best way to organize my portfolio, I asked my son, who is this programming genius, to help me, right? I figured I'd get a little bit of my investment in his education back. And so we started, like everybody, with just spreadsheets, right? And so, we started doing spreadsheets, and, as you guys, if you've had any experience with them, they become more and more difficult as you acquire more and more assets and more different types of assets. Because I was doing, rentals and lending and buying notes and doing all these different things. And then the longer these assets, have a time frame, you've got all this data that's coming and going. It just gets hard to manage, right? And so I really was getting frustrated with the limitations of the spreadsheets. And, I was sort of saying that to my son. He said, well, what do you want? And so I took a couple of weeks and I just sat down and I mapped out what an ideal scenario would be, functionality that a spreadsheet could have. And I went back to him and I showed him the list, and he looked at the list. He goes, Dad, spreadsheets can't do most of the things you're asking. You need an app. I said, awesome. What's an app, right? And that's when that's when we began our journey, right? And that's when we began our journey to develop the perfect software for the real estate investor. And so, as George Antone, and if you don't have his books, get them. I'm telling you, he's great. But as he mentioned, serious investors need a dashboard, but there's more to it than that. He went on to say that most portfolios are just scattered parts and pieces with a spreadsheet or two here or there, or documents in another folder, contacts in your phone, some tax stuff in QuickBooks, or even in, shoe boxes, you get the point. And surprisingly, many investors that use spreadsheets tell me that they just fill out the cells and they don't really do anything with the data. But dashboards give you actionable information. And a real estate specific dashboard gives you all the information, or allows you to see everything you need to know about your assets in one place, just like the Iron Man mask, which allows you to make better and faster decisions regarding your investments. Now, if I could see you all, I'd ask you, now, how many of you guys have a dashboard like this that you can look at with your investments? And I hope somebody's do.
Not really.
Yeah, I've been shocked.
No.
I'm talking to some high level people and they don't even have them. And then the next question follows, well, can you access it right now? And if you can't, then stay tuned. I'll show you how we do this. So great book, Atomic Habits. This author, James Clear, writes that winners and losers both have the same goals. You know, we always talk about same goals, right? Or goal setting, right? But he said, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Can I repeat that? You fall to the level of your systems. He goes on to say, you know, winners have great systems. I think there's a hint there, right? You know, winners know that time is money. If there's a software or system out there that can make them more efficient or more effective, they don't hesitate to make the changes that will ultimately make them better and give them more free time to enjoy their families or to make more deals. And so, as Rick mentioned, our software is called REI Copilot. And when we first started developing our software, we just went out to develop software for real estate. But along the way, we discovered a system to help our clients reach their freedom goals, and ended up creating software to support the system. And the system's pretty simple. It's based on 3 legs of a triangle: planning, organization, and accountability. And as you can see, these aren't particularly earth-shattering concepts, but how many of us actually do these things and do them consistently? Remember, freedom doesn't just happen. Freedom must be created. And it starts with planning. So, you know, Tony Robbins said, setting goals is the first step in turning the invisible into the visible. You know, without a goal and a plan to get you there, you'll never achieve the life of your dreams. Or as Yogi Berra put it, if you don't know where you're going, you'll end up somewhere else. And so the first step is to set your goals using your freedom planner. I'm curious, anybody have goals or targets they're trying to reach already?
Well, we start at the beginning of the year. I know I try to write things down, but yeah, it's not a perfect system.
It's not, and it's hard. So this is the first thing we tackled. So we have this thing called a freedom planner inside our software. And so the first thing that you do is look at your monthly expenses. So you just track your monthly expenses, things that you spend every month consistently. And then you come up with the number for that. And then you add a lifestyle income. And we call that's just an amount of disposable income you'd like to have over and above your monthly expenses. You know, it's also called your burn rate, right? It makes it hit more home when you say it's a burn rate. How much money am I burning through every month, right? And then we calculate that using your effective tax rate, and we come up with a monthly number that we're trying to target. And then we have a reinvestment strategy, right? So we look at money coming into your portfolio, and then, you know, depending on where you are in different stages of your life, some of us that are older may say, well, look, I'm not trying to grow my portfolio anymore. I might just want to spend the dividends. But all of us that are trying to grow our portfolio bigger and grow our assets, we're going to say, yes, I want to reinvest those dividends. And then we're going to set a threshold. Every $50,000, I'm going to buy, you know, another house, or I'm going to lend money, or I'm going to do whatever. And then you put your anticipated return. And then we've got planned out what the strategy is. Then we look at how much money you have now and how much income you're currently having from your investments, your passive investments, not your W-2. And then we look at that gap, as it's called, and then make a plan to determine how you're going to fill that gap and how long it'll take you to get there, right? Now, the neat thing about this is that you can alter this at any time, and then, you know, you can change, you know, you might want to change your expenses, or you might want to decrease them, or you might want to make more investments or come up with some other money that you can invest. So it gives you the freedom to change it along the way. So it's not just set. And then for goals to be effective, they must be measurable, right? And visible. And the Freedom Tracker plots the cash flow of all your assets against the Freedom Plan and lets you literally see the progress towards your freedom goal. And that's really a motivator. And eventually we're going to, you have a question? No. Okay. And eventually we're going to add some artificial intelligence to make suggestions if you're missing the marks, like maybe, you know, increase the return on your investments or move the date for your freedom. But you're actually literally getting, if you look on the side, there's a date where this person can retire and how long it's going to take them to get there. And if they move off, this date will change, right? And so the next step after planning is organization. And really a lot of investors find it difficult to figure out how to organize everything, you know, which is really critical to investing with less time and stress and to reaching your goal. And with our system, the organization is already done for you. And as you'll see in a minute, we organize a portfolio 8 ways to Sunday. And so obviously there are many benefits to a well-organized real estate portfolio. But if you haven't taken the time to organize your investments, then think about the consequences. In other words, if you have a disorganized portfolio, you're more likely to lose profits, you're more stressed in managing your investments, and there's a greater chance of running into legal or tax problems at some point down the road. And as I mentioned, we take portfolio organization to a whole nother level, right? As we organize all types of assets, as Rick mentioned, from rentals to lending deals to mortgage notes to funds and syndications. And we even have a way to keep track of your stock market and your life insurance and other types of non-real estate investments. And all of your investments are organized from the portfolio level all the way down to individual assets. And then one feature that I really love is the ability to group any group of assets by your funding source or by an entity. So you could group all of your lending deals, if you have them in your self-directed IRA, or if you have a partnership or an LLC, all those deals can be looked together. And then we organize the returns and the amount of money in those as well. So it's a pretty sophisticated thing, and it's pretty easy to do. Now, this is part of an individual asset card, and each asset is organized to store everything you need, right? From important documents to leases, to pictures, to contact information, especially if you're doing deals with partners, to mortgage or debt information. You can do a pro forma. It has automated reminders. And then there's a ledger that tracks cash flow in and out. And then there's also the partnership information if you're doing any kind of partnership activity. And one important feature is the ability to make date stamp notes to help manage your asset. Now, this is a really complicated investment, and I don't really put it up there for that, but just think about this. This is a really complicated wrap note with an underlying mortgage and a delay of 27 months before my first payment comes in. And all I did was write the details in the notes section about who's getting what. And then and then I created these reminders, these automated reminders that will come to my cell phone and to my email about when the payments would start for the mortgage, and then the underlying note that I've got to pay and how long it's going to go and when it ends. And so I'm tracking all these things, and then I don't have to really worry about them because it's done for me automatically. Can you imagine trying to do that with a calendar or with a spreadsheet? I mean, look at when these payments start, 2025 until I get a payment, right? And so you'd lose money. You just couldn't keep up with it. And so,
well, with lots of deals going on too, if you're having so many just moving parts, you easily can you forget about stuff.
Yes, trust me. Ask me how I know that. Right? And so the good news is now all my assets are organized in one place that I can access anytime and anywhere. I can play pool again, right? Which I'm really not good at, but I have to do some of that pool table, I guess. And then once you have a target goal and all of your assets are organized, it's important to make sure that your assets are performing as they should, to make sure that you hit your target and do it in the predetermined time. And so there's a guy on CNBC, I don't know if you know this guy, Marcus Lemoy, but he said, if you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business. And I'm surprised to find how many investors treat their real estate more like a hobby than a business, right? Because they don't know their numbers. They see cash flow and they figure everything's okay, just like Randy, right? And so I don't know if you guys know David Richter or read his book, Profit First Real Estate Investing. He used to live here in Richmond for a while. And he said there's three numbers that every real estate investor needs to know. How much did you make? How much did you spend? And how much did you keep? And right across the top of the app on each asset, we're tracking those very things, right? And David and I have been preaching the importance of knowing your numbers for a long time. And the problem is the amount of effort it typically takes to have all this information and for all those different assets, like Rick was saying. That's where automation comes in, because we make an important but time-consuming task accessible just with the push of a button. And so when it comes to accountability, the Freedom Tracker is the ultimate accountability tool, as it ensures that your assets are supporting the goals that you've set, right? And so we break goals up into smaller chunks so you don't get overwhelmed. And I think that's really the key. And so we break them down into monthly increments. George Antone calls them milestones. You might have heard that in a book called Traction as well. And we give you the ability to adjust the goal or the investment at any time. And being accountable is important, but it's hard to be accountable to yourself. And we like to think of REI Copilot as your silent accountability partner. And so holding each asset or property manager accountable means you have to stay on top of important events, such as rental payments or leases coming due, or tax payments and private loans and notes maturing, right? And so REI Copilot sends automated reminders. This is what one of the reminders looks like, right? And it sends you a text as well. And it helps you keep on top of all these things. And it saves you time and worry, because I don't have to go looking through spreadsheets or, going through calendars or Google searches or, doing all these crazy things, wondering if I've gotten everything or worrying that I missed something, right? We figure you got better things to do with your time than staring at spreadsheets and calendars all the time. And so part of holding your assets accountable is making sure you get paid and get paid the correct amount. And so, I've got an alert one time that said I had late rent, right? Well, the late rent notice said $50. And I said, well, that's weird, because the rent was like $1,500 and this is like $50. I said, that doesn't make any sense. Well, we store your documents, one of which is the lease. And I looked on my phone, I looked up the document. It turns out that the tenant had renewed their lease and just paid, the rent had gone up by $50, and they just turned around and paid their old amount. So I called a property manager who's like these collective genius level people. I said, hey, this tenant didn't pay the right amount of rent. And they go, oh, we didn't catch that, right? And they did that 4 times for one investment, to the point where I said, look, don't take anything out for property management till you can square up with this tenant, because they owed me $250 and they were still collecting their part. And I said, no, we got to get this right. And I didn't have to do anything other than look at my phone and that reminder that came to it. And then I don't know if you guys do any kind of private lending at all, but one of the things that takes a little bit of time is to figure out what the payoffs are, right? And it takes some effort. It takes a good amount of time. And all you have to do with our app is just choose a date, and then it tracks how much money you're due, how much you've earned to date, and then what the balance is. And if you've ever done any kind of wrap lending, if you haven't, it's a great way to invest with your self-directed IRA. Talk about it another time. But it'll also calculate the payoffs for your JV lenders as well. So, everything automated and everything easy. That's what we like. Now, have you ever thought about what would happen to your investment if, God forbid, something happened to you, you suddenly died? That's kind of a morbid thought, right? Well, one of the things that we never anticipated when we created the app is the advantage of having all of your investments in one location as it relates to your legacy, should something happen to you. And so I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Mary Hart. She's a phenomenal real estate attorney in the real estate space, and she does estate planning as well. And I was at an event with Mary last year, I think it was, and she said, your estate plan is the ultimate love letter to those you leave behind. The nicest gift you can leave to your loved ones as they grieve is to make it easier for them to handle your estate. As Mary said, preparing for your death is unpleasant but necessary part of legacy planning. Have you ever thought about how your spouse or significant other would handle your portfolio if you died? You know where you keep everything, but do they know all the different places you keep things and all the different passwords, right? All those special places where it's really here to hide it from other people, right? With REI Copilot, as I mentioned, there's one location for all of your assets and one password. And all of your bank accounts are connected to the app, and your partnerships with individual assets and their contact information. And then you have those individual notes for each asset. And then one of the things that we've added to it a couple of years ago was to be able to keep all of your estate planning documents in a different part of the app. And so all these things that your spouse will or significant other will need if you die are right here. And they don't have to go searching for everything or looking for it in a safe or wherever. Everything's right here, right? And so when I think about these things, I want to ask you, what's your definition of freedom? How are you going to get there? I really want to challenge each of you. Do you have written goals? And more importantly, do you have a deadline? And do you have the tools to get there? And if not, what's holding you back? So if you're serious about investing, it's time to put on your Iron Man suit. Make a plan, get organized, then track the performance of your investments and those who manage your investments. There are lots of ways to do some of these things, but I couldn't find a way to do all these things and keep them all in one place. And that's why we created REI Copilot, to make the average investor into a super investor. And I hope this was helpful, and I hope I've challenged each of you to take action. Thank you for listening. And here's my contact information.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Definitely.
I'm gonna
Thank
stop
you,
the share.
Paul.
Yes. So Paul, we want to open it up for questions if that's
Sure.
okay. And
Yeah,
anybody
absolutely.
can unmute and ask questions if you like.
I don't know how to raise my hand, but I'll go first.
Okay, go for it.
So when I can totally relate, Paul, to what you were saying about the pool table analogy of having everything spread out. Because when Anna and I first bought, one of our first properties, we had a lot of receipts, a lot of expenses, and we rented a timeshare. This was at Christmas. Anna, do you remember this? We rented a timeshare in Tampa.
I totally do.
We went down
Timeshare
and
for
we tried to do our taxes. Timeshare for taxes. And we tried to do exactly what, and it was, we said never again. We learned from that experience. It was, but it was one of those things where if you don't get your systems set up correctly, it can be very challenging. I'm curious because we've been using our software that we've been using is through our property management company software.
Yeah.
And before that, we used QuickBooks. Do you see any big differences? I don't know if you've used QuickBooks. Have you tried that versus yours? And is there, yours is obviously specific to real estate. I was wondering if you've heard any feedback regarding that.
Yeah, we've had people switch over.
differences and benefits.
Yeah, we've had people switch over. You know, the difference is QuickBooks is not really for real estate, it's for accounting, right? And so the problem you run into is you can't do all these other things that we just talked about, right? So I find that a lot of our clients have a software for this and a software for this and something over here and this over that. And it's everywhere, right? And again, when you get back to that legacy piece or you get to the organizational piece, you can't find it all, right? And so, you know, the software looks a lot like QuickBooks as far as the functionality to enter transactions into the app. And so I remember the Coming to America when they had McDowell's, you know, the thing that had the double arches. I don't know if you saw that movie, but anyways, Eddie Murphy, right. And this guy's stealing everything. So our asset, you know, the input looks a lot like QuickBooks and has a lot of similar functionality to that. And you can import and export spreadsheets. They have to be sort of specifically oriented, but we found a lot of people, because you can print a P&L from ours and it just lists each of your assets and all the expenses from there. But we found a lot of our clients it's weird. Some of the more advanced investors just like having everything in one place. And I was surprised how much it was my challenge. I didn't realize everybody else had the same problem. So, and when you said, you know, until you get organized and have systems, people used to ask me, well, when's the right time? How many assets should you have? And I'm like, well, I used to think you used to have a few, but I'm thinking, you know, before you get started, if you have everything already ready to go and the organization's done for you, it probably makes more sense to already have it in place if you're pretty close to getting a deal done, because then you have things right from the beginning, right? I mean, we had to go back and redo all this stuff and go back and input all this data and all that. And it was a challenge to do that. So.
Gotcha. So does your software work? It did. I can totally relate to what you're saying though. We have you know, in terms of like using different softwares, I can totally relate, because we use Google Calendar for reminding us that our tax payments are due, or we have, but it's a challenge because actually what Anna and I do, because we know we're only limited by our weakest part, is we copy each other to help each other remember, because there's just too many moving pieces that we might forget, kind of thing. So this is kind of a one-stop shop, it sounds like. Yeah,
I mean, that's the whole concept behind it. And that's been the part that I've gotten the most feedback from, is people really like the aspect of just going to one place and not having to do this everywhere. Now, you know, I still have property managers that have their software, and I just go into their software and create, you know, just download their stuff. So, you know, or transfer the information into ours so that I can track what I've got. And, you know, we're tracking returns and looking at ROIs and doing all those things. And of course, your investors, you know, your property manager software, I don't think they do that kind of stuff. At least I haven't seen that they do, the ones I'm exposed to, the ones in Buildium and all that. So, and I kind of want to know
we don't do it for our clients. We do it for ourselves.
Yeah, I kind of want to know how it's doing. So, and then to have have a freedom goal and have the freedom tracker tracking your income against that, you'd like to know what your returns are. And they do it by asset class, and they do it by individual assets as well. And then we're sort of building out that one piece that I talked about, which is the where you can organize by entity or by funding source. We're working on getting that built out so you can get returns from that individual group of so I have investors that they partner with several people, and so they put their houses together, they do, and then they give it a name, and then they know exactly what's in that. They go, I get sometimes so many, I don't know who I've got a house with or what. And so they know who the investors are with them, the co-investors, they know the group it's with, and they know what assets are with them. So that's been a pretty big piece for them. And then for me, having a self-directed IRA that couldn't give you a return was kind of crazy, right? So that's the part we're working on now, is to get on ROI for those as well.
Oh,
all right.
gotcha.
So there is actually another question. Julie, I don't know if you want to ask it yourself or if you want me to ask it for you.
I can ask it. It's really
Okay,
like how would security be handled? There'd be a lot of sensitive information put in there.
Yes.
So how is that?
That's a great question, Julie, and one we get asked all the time. Well, so for instance, we connect to your bank account using a software called Plaid, I believe it is. I had a brain fart for a second. And we don't store data, we just pull tokens, and so there's a security step to that. So some of the accounts, some banks we can't connect to because the security is too tight to let us do that, but there are banks that that will allow this in. But it's a software that Mint and a lot of big companies use. So it's nothing we invented. It's just a software that we incorporated into ours. And then as far as the servers go, they're on Amazon Web Services all over the place, and there's two-factor identification and all those things. So we don't really store any of that data in your in the app. So it's called when you cut the app on.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, it's a great question.
All right, are there other
Can your
questions?
software be used? Oh, I'm
Go ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead,
I'm
Rick,
raising
go
my
ahead.
hand. Can your software be used to analyze a deal, or is it not? It's really more post data information.
It can, in that we have a pro forma in the analytics section of ours. So it'll pull Zillow data from the property you're looking at, and it'll pull comps in that area. And then it will, you have a pro forma that you can save if you want to, but you can change, like if I put a mortgage on it, or if I did, if I raised the rent or did that, you can look at what the cash flow would be. So from that standpoint, yes, it can help you analyze data or investments. Did that answer your question?
Awesome. Okay.
All right, so
it did.
I want to just take this one more time before we ask some more questions. So if anybody is watching on YouTube, please remember to like and subscribe and push that notification button so you see when new videos come out. And does anyone have other questions? Rick, did you have another question? I see that
So,
unmute.
we've got a number of properties. We've got a number of properties. It's hard to enter a lot of data, because if you've got a lot of properties to put in there, what is it, is it time consuming to kind of like enter data to try to get some of these numbers? Or
what I've been doing, like if we have somebody that's got a lot of history for a lot of properties, creating the assets pretty easy. You can upload spreadsheets to do a lot of this. And usually we'll have our software engineers walk you through that and do that, help you do that together. But a lot of times what I'm doing is creating the asset, and then I'm doing blocks of, if I know what last year's income was and I don't need it for taxes or anything like that, if I've already, or 2 years ago, I might put a cumulative. Here's how much income I've had. It'll throw your analytics off a little bit. So I usually put the last year, because the software goes back and looks deliberately at the last trailing 12. To give you all your ROIs and things like that. So I usually enter those, and you can have somebody, it's not rocket science, and so you can have somebody do that for you if you want. But yeah, but there's software that a spreadsheet we can upload as well to do that.
now, also would this be something you can share with your accountant, your tax accountant, or is it not really meant for?
Yeah, well, it depends on your relationship, obviously, with your tax accountant. You'll show them everything, but you can print out a P&L of all the assets that are in the app, and it'll look at all the, it lists the assets across the top and then the expenses down the side. And so you could show that, or you can just give them your password if you want to, and they can go into the software that way.
Oh, okay.
We actually, Paul, I know that in our different accounting systems, we can actually create another password or a username or whatever for the account. Do you have the ability to do that in your system also?
We in a previous version, we actually had a data entry that you could only bring up the data entry part of it and then just do things like that. We have not, but it's probably a great idea. We've had some people suggest it in the past. Not a ton of people have suggested. Most people are just either printing out a P&L or just giving the accountant the password to it. So, I mean, you can't really trade any money or do anything with it. It's just tracking what you're telling them you got anyway. So, unless you're lying to him, then I probably wouldn't wouldn't tell him what you got. Give him your password, right?
Understand.
One of the biggest, we went through this maybe a couple of years ago. Anna and I were trying to do estate planning, and we had a friend of ours that got COVID, and we just learned how important it is that we have a plan in place in case something goes awry with one of us or both of us. And that's what really resonated with me in your presentation about, if your spouse isn't involved in your business and that's what our friend happened to be. He was totally involved in real estate, and she didn't know anything. She didn't want to know anything.
That
And I
sounds
are a little
familiar.
different, but I mean, I'm just saying, it really is a, this type of tool. I could see it being a huge, relief if, just saying, hey, honey, I know you don't care about my business, but just here's the login and password so that you'll know where to look when I die, kind of thing.
Yeah, we don't know. We were thinking if it would be morbid or not, but put a place where you can put a video recording in there or something. I don't, I'm not. We're still thinking about that.
Oh, yeah.
but the crazy thing is my wife thinks the same thing. Like I said, we did the Dave Ramsey thing, so there was a big number in the checking account, and that she felt good. And then when it went away, she thought we were poor, so because I'd invested all the money, and she still thinks. Now that we're retired on our investment, she still thinks it's hocus pocus. So maybe she's going to have to start believing now. So it's making the payments. So, and it got us through COVID when our practice was shut down. So, but same thing, my wife wants nothing, but she knows friends of mine that are investors, and all she's got to do is call them and get them access to this, and then they'll be able to help her with everything. So that's the crazy part about it, right? Money's still going to come in, and things still need to be done.
So Paul, a couple of people have asked, Kara was wondering, is there a cost or a monthly membership associated with the app? She said she tried to find it on the website, but couldn't.
Right. It's reicopilot.com. It should be on there, but we haven't put a whole lot of, what's funny is we've been just talking in sort of one-on-one to individual investors, because we don't want just anybody using it. We want somebody that knows what they're doing, and so we sort of onboard people one-on-one. It's a little more of a boutique thing. Yeah, there's a monthly subscription. And I'm happy to give you guys the same price that we give everybody else. It's half price for what we typically charge, depending on a couple levels. But it's really I've heard more people than not say that I can't believe what it does for what we pay. So that's what I want to hear. I mean, what my goal is for this to be irreplaceable for people, right? And so that's really our goal in that. So there's a subscription, you quit anytime, no obligation to keep going or anything like that.
Okay.
What was that amount?
Okay. Was there any other questions?
I didn't hear the amount. I know I heard half price.
It's half price. I figured with a recording like that, we'll talk about it off recording.
I got you. Could change over time. It doesn't
so
stay
email
and
you.
all that. So that's a good point.
Yeah, email me and I'll be happy to
discuss.
I didn't want to. That's kind of a deal. I didn't want to give it to everybody, So
right, that is a good point. So yes. So what I would do is go back in the chat. His information is in the very top, and his email address is there. It's Dr. White at reicopilot.com. So definitely email him, and he can get you more information and the pricing and the membership and things like that. So that is a very good point, that this could be out there for who knows how long.
Yeah.
So definitely.
I'll actually onboard you, help you get things started if you want to do that. So my main purpose was just to challenge you guys to take some action. That's really my goal. $59 not gonna, or whatever amount of money is not going to break or make anybody, right? But helping people out is really what we want to do. So.
Gotcha. Well, wonderful. Does anyone have any other questions? Rick, you have another question?
Rick was a plant today. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
He's very good at asking questions.
I love it.
Definitely.
I love it. That's speaker's best friend is somebody asking questions. So I love it. So
he keeps it going. Rick, did you have another question or?
No, I didn't. I'm set. Thank you, Paul.
Well, feel free to call me if you guys have any questions. And thank you for having me again. It was really, really an honor to be here.
All right, Paul, we really, really appreciate it. And we'll make sure to share your information also in the comments. Is it okay if we share your email in the comments?
Sure. Absolutely.
Wonderful. All right. Well, we'll definitely do that. And we will plan on possibly seeing you again at one of those meetings. I actually have a mastermind with Barry Hart and Wendy and a bunch of others in October that I'm going to. So we run in a lot of the same circles. Are you going on the investor cruise in February?
My wife is deciding now whether we're going or not. So we went on the last one. It was great. It really was. We had a great time there.
Oh, I hope to see you there.
Yeah.
Yes, well, we'll be there. So hopefully
Good.
we'll see you there. And like I said, it sounds like we run in the same circles. Wonderful. So thank you
does.
so much. And to everyone, I will be, like I said, I'm going to be sending out this link. And so you can save the chat. If you click on those 3 little dots, you can actually save it and copy it and paste it, or copy and paste any of the chats. And does anyone have any questions about Fred REIA or anything that's not to Paul, that's to Rick and I? Does anyone have that? Okay, well, what we'll do then, guys, is we will call it a wrap. And if you're in Virginia, we will see you on August 24th in Wegmans at the in-person networking, and we'll see you next month. And look for those market statistics in another video too. Have a wonderful night, everybody. Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome.
Thanks,
Good night. Thanks for
everybody.
having me.
Thank you, Paul. Good night.